feeling a little bit of separation anxiety from Figuarts and Mafex after seeing what Marvel Legends can do for 40 bucks. And that's me being quite honestly very fair, since after seeing some initial photos, I thought to myself, okay, after that Deadpool, I think we got our next candidate for Marvel Legends that I'm finally gonna come around to and pick up and cover on the channel. Most specifically this particular character, since he is somewhat Spider-Man related, even though I even feel like I need to hold myself back from saying that, considering that Sony's trying to distance themselves as much as possible from Spidey, even with their third Venom outing. It's like, okay, it's almost like it doesn't even matter from either Spidey or the MCU, none of your movies matter, but one thing is definitely consistent. Regardless of how you feel about the portrayal of the character, considering he showed up in a PG-13 movie, the actual look of Carnage, in my opinion, is actually pretty dope. And it looks like very consistent throughout. Toy companies are able to nail down the aesthetic and the overall execution of a proper Carnage figure, whether it be as high-end as Hot Toys, as middle tier as Figuarts, and now, at simply just 40 bucks, Marvel Legends. And pulling him out of the box, I thought to myself, yeah, impressions are definitely made, because pulling him out and noticing that he is in fact to scale with 6-inch figures. So taking any of your Spideys and putting him up next to Carnage, you will definitely note that he is in fact to scale. Even though Spidey's going to be retaining its 6-inch stature, Carnage is simply just towering over him. He measures at about probably at roughly somewhere between 9 and 10-ish inches. He's almost about the size of a mega figure for McFarlane Toys, and surprisingly enough, at the same cost of a mega figure from McFarlane Toys, at roughly about 40 bucks, like I said. And initially, just the figure alone, I thought to myself, actually, I'm kind of seeing exactly where the plastic sort of comes from. And you guys know me, that I'm always a proponent of value being packaged into the box, and Marvel Legends has often kind of throttled that concept for me, because with the Spidey figures, after my complaints of feeling like I'm pulling the same character, or rather the same mold, the same figure right out of the box, only with a different skin, they're holding back on accessories, they're even cutting out some of the web accessories and just throwing in 1 or 2 extra hands. I was like, what am I exactly doing here as far as value? But I knew that something was up with Carnage, and I feel like my instincts, my Spidey senses were in fact quite right, because just the figure alone, not counting everything else that he's included with, you can see right here, the molding, the sculpting, the color. It's actually done quite right at the $40 tier, whether you come across him in the store or order him online. For something that is stamped with the Marvel Legends logo, I am most thoroughly impressed. He definitely makes the impression. He definitely feels very tall and very weighty and very scary looking outside of the box, standing next to your other Marvel Legends. Now, here's the thing. Despite accounting for the stature, accounting for the scale, and noticing that he is, like I said, kind of pushing that 10-inch mark, it does make him a little bit top-heavy, since he is meant to be a much more of a lankier physique as far as the symbiotes are concerned. He's definitely meant to be a little bit more stretched out than your bulky Venom character. He is a little on the top-heavy side. Once you kind of get down to the proportions of the feet, despite still being accurate, there's something very, very top heavy about the character. I don't know if it's maybe like the solid building of the plastic or anything like that, but just something to note, because he is a little difficult to get standing properly on the feet. He comes with his own assortment. Oh my God. Once you are able to get things level-headed and actually put him in, like I said, a very taunting pose, something that just feels very lifelike, yeah, Venom is definitely able to make the grade, specifically with the texture, the veininess, the tendrils kind of poking out. Granted, I'm a little fearful for the rubberized pieces right here. They're flexible, so at least there's some leeway there as far as making sure that you don't get too scared of breaking them off, but just be aware that this is still a Marvel Legends at the end of the day, and it's not necessarily made out of the most premium quality. It's still a very solid build. It's very well made as far as everything being tooled together, but just be mindful of these tendrils. But it only helps at making the details come alive for this character. Whether you're subjectively against this design for Carnage, or you fare something more that's a bit more on the comic accurate side, come on, you gotta give Marvel Legends some props, specifically with these darker black aesthetics around the chest area. You can see a little bit of the musculature just kind of stretching across the abdomen and the chest muscles, pulling on over to the sides, making him look like he's skinless, bloodied. It's actually a really cool detail, really cool effect that still carries on over from the legs to the arms, and then of course the head sculpt with the awesome eyes, the teeth, the overall shebang right there. That is Carnage through and through. It's just a shame that most of that detail that I was really praising is only very, 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 very evident from the front. Because when you rotate the figure towards the back, sculpting and detail is still pretty good, but you'll notice that we're missing an awful lot of those black detailings to make things a bit fleshier, to make things a little bit more vibrant and contrasting with the red. You'll notice that we mainly just have it a little bit on the forearm and the back of the thighs. Apart from that, the back is completely absent of any of those black details, except for, like I said, some really cool musculature and molding, and even a little bit of a detail to the spine that you can kind of make out right here from the back side. But once you move up to the empty holes, and then of course a little bit around the trapezoid area, yeah, you'll notice that you have just a little bit of black right there, but it's just a little bit too strong that it just makes the absent areas around the ass or around the back, lower back area, stand out a little bit more as unpainted. You know, we often criticize McFarlane as far as not painting the backside of some of their Batman figures because he's going to be covering it with a cape. We don't have the cape to really fall back on with a character like this. So I'd say that we should be even across the board and criticize both companies for doing so, even if the benefit is more so of a financial one on the side of the company as opposed to the consumer. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I understand why it's logistically there, because it's there to save money. Todd McFarlane has often commented on this, that sometimes there's certain Batman characters that he knows he's going to be covering the back with a cape. He often pulls back on the paint apps. Yes, it does something to kind of break the illusion, specifically that BVS Batman from earlier this year, where you'll notice that he was missing an awful lot of those paint apps from the back, but you have the cape. Not so much of that happening here with Carnage, despite some of the extra accessories that are being kind of foreshadowed here with these open spots. But unfortunately, not only do we have the lack of the paint applications towards the back right here, but those empty spots are a bit of an eyesore, and I really do wish that they could have at least thrown in some kind of caps to plug them in and cover them up. So if we are to say that we keep our attention towards the front, that's where the impressions still stay locked in, specifically with the clawed up hands. I love these hands. These are the default hands that he comes with. So good to see that the majority of the stuff that's just on the figure itself is pretty impressionable. The only thing to note are the feet. Of course, like we have established in Sony's Venomverse, or whatever the hell you really want to call these things that are called, movies. The symbiotes have toes. They don't really have proper, shoes or anything like that. I guess it's just a characteristic to make them look a little bit more alien-y. Never been the biggest fan, but at least they're consistent. And the only thing that kind of threw me off a little bit is the actual sculpting of the foot. You'll notice right here that it's kind of bent on over to the side, and trust me, I saw that and I thought to myself, did I get the feet swapped out by accident? I really hope that's not the case. But once you take a closer look at the toes and notice that the shorter one is actually on the outside, meaning the pinky, then that's when you can tell that, yeah, they're technically correct, but they decided to give Carnage here some bunions. So just thought that would be an interesting fact right there. Check your Carnages if you guys did in fact order your Marvel Legends Let There Be Carnage movie Carnage, or Marvel's Carnage as the box entails, and tell me if I'm kind of off my rocker here. Are the feet just sculpted really weird as far as the positioning or the orientation rather? Because like I said, it looks like it has either bunions or they swapped out the feet and I got the wrong feet on either end of the leg. But at the same time, noting that the toes are actually oriented properly, so you have the two middle ones right there being the longest, but then you have the shortest on the outside, which is designed to be the pinky. Therefore, it's technically accurate, and my guys just got bunions, got bow-legged feet. I don't know what's going on there. At least the feet themselves are sculpted and, like I said, etched out with the paint applications on top to make the nerves and the tendrils come alive a little bit better, so that's awesome. And plus, if the feet are in fact correct, that's a good thing, because there's no way that we're going to be able to swap out the feet to get them on right, considering the joints that are found in the ankles and how they move about. which brings us to the articulation portion. Regardless of the height or the girth of the figure itself, it looks like the majority of the points of articulation that Marvel Legends often carries with their figures is still found here with Carnage. The head is able to rotate full 360 degrees on the ball joint, as well as being able to move generously upwards like so, and then tilt almost all the way down into his neck, and then of course side to side. Although the side to side movement could have been a little better, especially with a character like Carnage, because you want him to look a little bit menacing. But once you start tilting upwards, a little bit more of that side to side tilting becomes much more achievable. So that's at least good to see. Overall, it's really, really good. The arms have kind of like this cutout, this cup kind of design to the shoulders. So definitely rotation full 360 degrees is not only achievable, but it's also a little on the right-handed side. So it stays pretty snug in place. And the hinge inside of the ball joint itself can also allow the arm to extend pretty much at the 180 degree, but it stops short right there because of these little tendril appendages that are kind of extending out, and it does kind of come into contact a little bit with the cup, so just keep that in mind. And sadly, there's no way to find any kind of like shrugging or butterfly motion. It's pretty stagnant in place, but this is Marvel Legends that we're talking about. Very seldom are you really going to find any butterfly joints, and when you do, it's mainly found on Spideys, not so much any of these bigger characters. Biceps can still fully rotate 360 degrees. Two joints at the elbows are fully able to bend the arm almost all the way up, except mine's just a little bit on the tight side, so make sure that you got yours fully doused in hot water or, of course, heated air with a blower dryer of some kind. And then the wrists can fully rotate 360, and the hinge inside can fully bend inwards and outwards. I noticed that the majority of the time when it comes to a character that's clawed up like this, that's very monstrous, whether it be Carnage, Venom, and the other one that immediately comes to mind on the McFarlane side, Titan Joker, that Titan Joker mega figure from Arkham Asylum. Most of the time, whenever they got these kind of clawed up hands, the hinging inside of the wrists is always very favorable. It always feels good in hand, and it feels like it fully bend inwards and outwards. It's just a common trait I've always noticed. And it doesn't get any more traditional than with the torso when it comes to Marvel Legends articulation. You got the mid-torso cut that fully rotates the upper body 360 degrees, as well as being able to crunch up pretty decently, not the best inwards, but really good extension towards the back. And then, of course, if you couldn't already tell, you can go further towards the back via the waist hinge. So sadly, no waist rotation as far as a cut is concerned, so they kind of flip-flopped it. It really depends on who they choose to give the hinge on the waist versus it being found on the torso. I feel like with Spideys, it's funny, originally I would have said with Spideys it's flipped. You get the hinge up here and then the waist cut down here, or the horizontal cut. But recently I've seen some other Spideys also kind of have this flipped this way, or at least this orientation. So pretty interesting. And like I said, it just kind of really depends on which buck they decide to go with. And it looks like they decided to go with this schematic with Carnage, where you have the hinge, the upside down hinge on the waist, and that's where you get further crunching inwards and outwards, but no kind of rotation whatsoever. You have to lean on the mid-torso or any kind of oblique crunching or any further vertical crunching to that mid-torso cut right about right there. Then you get the top leg joints, which are fully able to allow the leg to extend forwards about that far towards the front, and then a pretty decent amount towards the back, considering the limited mobility right about right there. And then, of course, some decent extension towards the sides that almost achieves the 180 right about right there. Despite navigating around these little tendrils that are kind of veering off the side of the thigh, you still get a decent amount of swiveling, actually a full swivel 360 degrees found on that upper cut. However, of course, like with many Marvel Legends, including Spidey's, you have quite an awful lot of this musculature that's very sculpted, very specifically, that when you rotate it around, it is going to break apart and kind of give you a little bit of this like break of illusion and make it look a little on the ugly side. Plus, comes with the risk of messing with these tendrils, so do be careful. But right below that, you get the two knee joints that are fully able to bend almost all the way up, actually fully all the way up, and flush towards the upper body of the leg right about right there, so that's pretty cool. Then you get to the ankles, which sadly, of course, are the traditional Marvel Legends joints that I'm not the biggest fan of, which is why I found it to be a little daunting to see that the feet might have been accidentally swapped and tooled incorrectly with my character, or at least my unit here. But from what I can tell, from what I personally can perceive, it looks like they are on correctly. But I really do want to hear from you guys in the comments. Do you think that my Carnage's feet are swapped out by accident? I'm hoping that's not the case because, again, these ankles make the feet pretty much stuck onto the rest of the body because they're made out of that like hinge movement where you can definitely pivot them downwards like so. They're a little bit on the tough side, but it does allow vertical movement, although pushing it towards the top and upwards is a little on the difficult and limited side. It can only really go about that far. And then rotation, you could pretty much forget about it, but it can technically still pivot and incline inwards and outwards like so, or rotate, but only when you have the foot pointing down. So again, it's this joint that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I really wish we could start walking away from it. So in case you're wondering if you get any kind of foot rotation that's completely horizontal and flat, you have to rely on the thigh swiveling to be able to do that. But like I said, for the time being, I would say that the top heaviness is really what's causing a little bit of the balancing problems that I am having, even though based on feeling, it kind of feels like the feet are flat on the surface. But you'll notice right there that unless you can distribute the weight properly, the height of the character, despite feeling very imposing and very true to a scaling kind of orientation for the character, it does cause some problems with the top heaviness because of the way that these feet are really tooled in together right there, and also because of just how weighty they made the top part of the plastic for the upper body more so than the legs themselves. And funny enough, if the figure just came as is like this, I would say at $40, he's not bad. Not the greatest, but he's definitely not bad, and I wouldn't have the biggest problem recommending him if you find him like on the shelf, and most definitely if you found him on clearance, considering this is still Marvel Legends we're talking about. However, the plot definitely got a little thicker when I noticed just how much they decided to toss in. I knew he was going to come with at least one or two little doodads, but they went a little extreme with Carnage. It's really quite ironic that Marvel Legends goes harder than the movie did with the character. My God, what were they thinking? While messing with the hands, you'll notice that they can technically come apart via the joint at the end of the wrist. So despite the swiveling of the wrist, you can remove the hands to be able to swap them out for his two other hand accessories. So he only comes with two other switchable hands, one of which is the right hand, and it looks pretty identical to the current hand he has on right now, except one of the fingers is now grown to look like a form of cleaver or knife, so it's kind of sticking out like that. And it's funny because on the one hand you can call this like the finger knife hand, but I like to call it the taunting hand. It kind of looks like he's taunting, like, come here, you know what I'm saying? So I really do like the personality kind of imbued in this hand, and this is probably the most hand-like accessory because, like I said, they pretty much just took the right hand and just sculpted out the middle finger to look more like a cleaver or like a knife sticking out. So that's pretty dope. But if you want to go a little extra, you can swap out either hand for the full-blown blade right about right here. Now, it is made out of this flexible plastic that kind of makes it feel a little jerky-like, but once you're able to move past that, you'll notice that you have the similar details for the veins, the musculature, the pain apps for the black to kind of blend in right here for the rest of the symbiote, and then overall, the impression of the blade itself is dope, and you even have a little bit of articulation found at the peg down here at the bottom, so you do have a hinge that can bend inwards and outwards, so you can put this on either one of his right or left arms and make it look like he's ready to cleave. So this is pretty dope, but if you want to go even nuttier, you got, of course, the iconic tongue alternate head for Carnage. Very similar to that of Venom's, except this one, he's got much more squinted eyes, and then, of course, he's got the open mouth to extend the very elongated tongue, which is really well sculpted and painted. And then the rest of the head is also pretty well done as far as paint and sculpting is concerned, very identical to that of the current one right there as far as quality, except for the slight paneling that you have going on around the jawline. You'll notice right here that a little bit of the jaw, you can see the separation of the plastic. And I gotta be honest, I've never been the biggest fan where the seams are in the most obvious spots. Obviously, there's going to be seams present in some of these lower tier figures, whether it come with, as far as pricing, as far as consumerism is concerned, like for Marvel Legends or McFarlane Toys, there's going to be seams. There's going to be production snafus here and there because it's not going to be like the most tailored. It's not going to be like the quality of plastic where you can see things kind of be hidden in plain sight, etc. And even Marvel Legends has gone as far as taking the extra step of delivering pinless joints. Carnage himself here is actually pretty pinless, if you haven't already noticed. But if you're gonna, go the extra step of delivering pinless joints, then what's gonna stop you from delivering a head sculpt that doesn't have separation of the plastic right there. I don't know. It just looks kind of tacky, kind of ruins a little bit of the illusion, the shelf presence. So, and it's a shame that it's tied to a very emotive head sculpt such as this one. So I really wish that would have been a little retrofitted, but at least you do get the edit head sculpt right there to change up the emotion if you would like. But wait! There's more! He comes with his own brand of licorice. I mean, come on. It either looks like licorice or jerky. It's pulling it out of the box. I was like, oh, I'm starting to get kind of hungry now. But no, jokes aside, he comes with 3 tendril accessories that are now the occupants of those empty spots on the back. That's why they were there. Still think that they could have tossed in a few extra plastic pieces to fill them in, but at the same time, if a company like Hot Toys is not going to be able to do it for certain characters, I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting. But if you do want to amplify the shelf presence of Carnage here, you can add these tendrils towards the back. Depends on which one you want to go for. I like to kind of vary it up so that you have basically 2 of the tendrils which are attached to the singular peg right here on the left, and then on the right you have the single one, and then at the bottom you have the other 2. And they're made out of this bendy wire, and as far as texturing and sculpting is concerned, they're pretty much made out of the same material and designed almost very similarly to that of the rest of the Carnage figure, except it's desperately missing some paint apps. I really do wish that a little bit of that black kind of aesthetic to the front of the figure could have still been carried on over to the tendrils. And once you see the tips of these things, you definitely see exactly why. Just look at this thing, the spikeage, the way that it's very dynamic and stretched out. Some of them are replicated to look like the blades that he has on the other 2 hand accessories. 2 of them kind of look like piercing spears. Like you have the singular one right here that kind of has this orientation to make it look like something that you just see in like Dante's Inferno or some shit. Very macabre, very bloody, very horrific, but that's exactly what you expect Carnage to be. And so I dig this design. I love it. I just wish that they could have added some black little aesthetics, kind of like the way that the front of his body looks like, so that it looks dope on him. It kind of gives it that added flavor. And then to me, one of my favorite ones out of these tendrils is this one that looks like it's kind of spraying out and shooting either spikes or little pieces of the symbiote to take down victims, to kill people. I don't know. There's something about this one that I really love. It even managed to push my affinity a little higher, knowing that it's technically articulated. There's a little bit of swiveling action here towards the top of this piece right here that you can rotate. Same thing goes for this spike on the other one that is conjoined with the clever piece right here on the singular peg. You can technically still rotate it if you want different orientations for that. So again, you'll notice that it's a shame that a lot of those black little paint applications are missing and make these tendrils very barren, especially when you start to take into consideration the bendy wire that you can find inside and bend and articulate to your heart's content. Very similar to that of the contemporary No Way Home Doc Ock figure. It's made out of that same material, so you can bend it and articulate it in any way that you so desire to make them look even more terrifying. And once you plug everything in and do the swaps, just look at that. Just look at it. Oh my god. Okay, see? I'm slowly but surely starting to see the light with Marvel Legends, and I feel like they're doing so as well, because for $40, I would say, yeah, I'm most definitely impressed. Sure, there's a couple of snags here or there as far as the paint applications being a little lacking on either the accessories or towards the back of the figure, and then of course my personal gripe with the paneling happening on the alternate head. But once you're able to look at the things that make Carnage right, you know that our world is just screwed when you have a toy company that I've been criticizing for the longest time, Marvel Legends, is able to really make Carnage feel much more alive and menacing than the movie that he was in. And like I said, I'm a huge proponent of the proper amount of value being packed into figures as far as the price is concerned, making sure that you're getting the right bang for your buck. And I would say that I have to be fair across the board, and this is still a case where Marvel Legends was able to do it just right, because I feel comfortable with the pricing of $40, and here you get alternate hands, an alternate head, tendrils on the back, and make a character that's got an abundance of shelf presence as far as one of the more seminal symbiote characters. Granted, it may not be the best portrayal of the character, and that's where things lean a little bit more towards the subjective. If you're not a huge fan of the way that this version of Carnage came about, then maybe you might want to skip on this figure. But if you are still digging the look of the character, despite the way that maybe he was played by Woody Harrelson, or the way that he was written by the filmmakers, if you're able to distance yourself from that and look at the character of Carnage, or at least look at the visual fidelity of Carnage and go, yeah, he still looks pretty dope, then by all means, pick this guy up when you get the chance, whether it be online or in the shelf, because at 40 bucks, I really don't feel like you can lose. And that's why I'm going to be giving Carnage here a very, 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 very high 8 out of 10. Keeping itself from 9 out of 10 territory only because of the top heaviness. He's already fallen in the most neutral of poses. He's already fallen like a number of times to the point where I'm getting a little scared that some of the paint might be chipping away from either the chest or head area. So do be mindful of that, because he is the most top heavy character, even with, like I said, some neutral poses. I'm not putting him in anything crazy, and that's even without the tendrils, without the extra accessories. He still manages to be just a little on the top heavy side. I don't know if it's because of the filament used on the top part of the body for the plastic or anything else, but there are some issues with the proper standing of the feet, and maybe again it could go back to what I was theorizing, that I might have gotten swapped out feet for my unit. But the toes indicate towards me specifically otherwise, but I'm still looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say about those feet, as well as the Carnage figure himself, if you guys managed to pick him up. What do you guys think about said figure? Are you able to still love this version of the character in figure form, despite maybe feeling a different type of way about the way he was in the movie, or vice versa? And does this entice you to maybe pick out other versions of this character, whether it be in figure arts form or even in Hot Toys form? Because despite being on the pricier side of like, what is it, like 350, 400 bucks, I still hear that Hot Toys Carnage from Let There Be Carnage is one of the must-haves out there if you're a fan of the way at least the character looks. But that's just what I'm hearing. In the meantime, I want to hear what you guys are saying, and while you're down there, hit the thumbs up button if you liked this video, hit the thumbs down if you did not, and as always, stay humble. I'll see you guys later.